In this lesson, we will be creating example of simple animated UI menu with the help of our IEnumerator components. So let's get started. First, let's import the resources from this lesson. Click on Assets, Import Package, Custom Package, and let's find our resources with the name menu.unity package. Let's open it and import everything. From the prefabs folder, let's drag and drop menu to the scene. We can see some window appeared, but it's fine. We just need to import some TextMesh Pro Essentials because we are using them in our menu game object. So let's press import. Let's close the window, and to refresh our content, let's delete the menu game object and re-import it back to the scene. And now we can see TextMesh Pro works fine. And the last step is to click on the menu game object and let's unpack prefab completely because we no longer need to work on prefab. And now let's select the whole prefab folder and let's delete it. Now let's expand our menu game object so we can access all of its childrens. And now first let's import our IEnumerator package, which we finished in our previous lessons. Let's import all files. Clear the console. Now let's start to organize our scene. And let's create a new game object. Let's call it animations. Inside, let's create another one. Let's call it single. And inside it, create another one. And let's call it BG for changing our background animation. Inside, let's add a driver component with a duration 1. And also canvas group controller. And let's drag and drop BG canvas group into my canvas group variable. Press preview on and we can see our canvas group animation works nicely. So let's turn off the preview. Now let's select again our BG game object and let's duplicate it and let's rename it to button right. So we can set up right button animation. First, let's remove controller canvas group and let's add controller transform instead. And let's select button right and drop it to our myTransform variable. Change the animation type to rect position. Change the axis Y to 0 and Z to 0 and press preview on. Nothing seems to work, but let's change our to variable to 33.3 as we have in our initial string. Now let's start to adjust from and let's set it to round number 70 and we see our button right sprite move out of the screen. Don't forget to turn off the preview. Select again our button right and let's create a duplicate and let's rename it to button X. And now select button X game object from our menu and drag and drop it to our myTransform variable. Change anim type to scale and change Y axis to 1 and Z axis to 1. Also change from variable to 0 and 2 to 1. Press preview on and we see it's working nicely. Now only change the to variable to 0.7, so we will have the same scale as we have in initial state, and turn off the preview. Now let's select again button X game object, make a duplicate, rename it to button yes. From menu, select button yes and drop it to our myTransform variable. Now let's change the to variable to 1. Press preview and let's test it and we see it's working nicely, so turn it off. Again, let's select button yes, create 2 more duplicates and let's rename them to button no and panel middle. Select first button no and grab a button no from menu and drop it to our myTransform variable. Press preview on to test it. It's working nice, so turn it off. Select our panel middle, and again from UI, drag and drop panel middle into our myTransform variable. Test preview, it's working, so turn it off. Now let's create our last animation, so duplicate our panel middle and rename it to panel hole scale. From the menu, drag and drop panel hole to our myTransform variable, and let's test it. It's working nicely, so turn it off. Now we finish all of our simple animations, so let's create composite ones with the list players. Let's select animations game object, and let's create new one. Rename it to list player, and also inside create new one and rename it to on scene start. Press add new component, and let's add driver list player. Let's fill the anim list. First select BG from our animations, and let's put it there. And also we want to add button right. Now let's change wait type to wait for previous to finish. Change our wait variable to 1 and also turn on auto start. Now from our scene, select our list player's game object, and let's create new one with the name panel hole anims. And let's add new component, driver list player on it, and let's fill the list. First select panel hole scale and put it to the list. Then we need panel middle animation. Then we need button yes animation and button no animation. And the last one will be button X animation. Now make sure that wait type is run all at once and only change wait in between time to 0.1. Now we would like to manage our buttons, so let's create a new game object and let's call it onClick. And inside, let's create new one for our first button and let's call it button right. Now add new onClick component on it. And let's select button right from the menu and drag and drop it into our myButton variable. Now let's add new click event and select button right from animations and drop it there, and from functions select driver and run backward. And it is because when we press our right button, we want to play backward animation, so it will basically get out of the screen. Let's add another event. Let's drag and drop button right from the menu. And let's make the button non-clickable with the button interactable off. Let's create new event. Drag and drop panel hole anims on it. And from the functions choose driver list player and playlist in direction. So when we press our button, it first run animation, so it will go itself out of screen, and also it will run our list player. So let's try it. First we see our first list with auto start show up, but then we have a problem. We can't click on a button. So turn off our test. Basically what we are missing is event system, which is by default provided when we create some UI element, but in our case we need to create one because it was not saved in our imported prefab. So let's do it. Just left click, select UI and select event system. So let's test it. We see our button show up, and when we press it, our button will hide and also our middle panel will show up. Now the buttons inside panel don't work yet, so let's fix it. Select our button right game object under onClick parent and let's duplicate it and let's rename it to button X. And from the menu, grab button X and drop it to myButton variable. Let's create new event. Let's select our panel hole anims and drop it there. And from the function menu, let's choose driver list player. And instead of playlist in direction, let's choose run list and keep the parameter off because we want this list to run backward. Create new event. Let's select button X and let's drop it there. And from the function menu, let's choose button, bool interactable, with the off as a parameter. So when we once press X button, it no longer will be clickable. Let's create another event. Let's drag and drop our button right animation on it. And from the function menu, let's choose driver run forward. We are doing it because when we press X, we want our right button to appear again. And also let's create new event and let's drag and drop button right. And we want from this button to be again interactable. So let's change parameter to be on. We can test it now. Let's press the button. Let's press the X. Again the button. And we have a slight problem. Our X button is now not interactable. So let's fix it. Let's select our button right. Add a new event. Drag and drop our button X from the menu on it. And from the functions, choose button and button interactable and turn it on. Now, when we test it, everything works how it should. So that's everything for now. We will finish the other buttons in the next lesson. So thank you and I'll see you there.